Welcome back. Today, we are immersing ourselves in a story that really, it just defines the modern age of fame and vulnerability.
Oh, absolutely.
We're talking about the infamous 2016 Paris robbery involving Kim Kardashian. And this wasn't just, a simple crime. It was this bizarre collision of hypervisibility, catastrophic security failure, and an absolutely improbable crew of seasoned French criminals.
Right. The ones known affectionately, or maybe ironically, as the Grandpa robbers.
Exactly.
Is a phenomenal case study. I mean, what makes this deep dive so essential isn't just the celebrity angle. It's how it exposes the way real-time digital broadcasting can, well, feed these very old-school criminal methods. So we're going to meticulously trace the narrative from the creation of the diamond ring flashed all over social media, to the psychological and physical terror of the heist itself.
And then the trial, which took nearly a decade.
Exactly. The nearly decade-long legal crawl and the ultimately astonishing conclusion of the 2025 trial that really tested the limits of justice, compassion, and, frankly, bureaucratic patience.
So our mission today is to unpack every single layer of this incident. We want to tell the story vividly, drawing specific nuggets from the sources that highlight the sheer absurdity and the profound impact of this event.
From the security blunders that felt almost unbelievable to the cultural shockwave it generated.
And finally, that unexpected leniency granted to the veteran thieves. So get ready, because this is the story of a $10 million heist that forced a global reckoning with how we handle fame and privacy.
Let's get into it.
So, to set the scene, we are in Paris. It's October 2016. It's the height of Fashion Week.
Right. And Kim Kardashian at this point she's a global phenomenon. Her entire celebrity is built on transparency, access, and this immediate real-time sharing of her life with a fan base that's in the hundreds of millions.
And the location she chose for privacy, this is the real kicker. It ended up being the exact ingredient that facilitated the crime.
She wasn't staying in some standard hotel with a busy lobby accessible to the public. It was a sort of luxurious ghost building.
Yes, the Hôtel de Portelis, often dubbed the No Address Hotel. This was meant to be the absolute pinnacle of discretion and exclusivity.
Right.
It's an unmarked private residence, a guest house favored by the ultra-rich. I mean, the sources mention past guests like Beyoncé, Madonna, Leonardo DiCaprio. It's essentially a walled compound of luxury apartments.
And the whole point is that you're free from public scrutiny.
That's the idea. The emphasis is on the guest's freedom.
And the suite she was in, it must have reflected that echelon of wealth.
Oh, absolutely. She was in the Sky Penthouse. It's this immense 3-level duplex spanning over 360 square meters with a panoramic terrace overlooking the city.
Wow.
We're talking about rooms that commanded, what, $15,000 to $16,800 a night? The entire premise of Portelis was that you could live your life in opulence without the world even knowing you were there.
But there's this massive, glaring irony embedded in that promise of secrecy. A huge one.
Because while the hotel was discreet from the outside world, it became an open secret to the very people who facilitate celebrity life in Paris.
That is the crucial detail. Investigators determined that the hotel's insistence on discretion actively undermined its actual security.
How so?
Well, because the guests demanded easy access, the sources confirm a shocking lack of operational security protocols. For example, get this, the main entrance keypad code was allegedly unchanged for 6 years.
Wait, 6 years?
6 years. Just think about that longevity. Over half a decade, every driver, every assistant, every delivery person, and potentially every opportunistic person associated with the service industry in that neighborhood.
They all knew how to get in?
They all knew. So instead of being a secure vault, it became this porous, private house, accessible to anyone with just basic local knowledge.
And that lack of concern extended right up to her personal quarters.
Precisely. Her specific suite, this multi-million-dollar pet house, had only a single common lock. The sort of Yale lock you'd find on a standard Parisian apartment door.
No deadbolt.
No additional anti-theft deadbolt, no secondary heavy-duty mechanism. And in the name of privacy, guests had insisted on the absence of internal CCTV cameras.
Unbelievable.
And to compound all of this, the security detail at night consisted of only one person, concierge. The entire setup prioritized convenience and this, perceived luxury over genuine physical safety.
That sounds less like a high-security residence and more like a high-value target just sitting there with its defenses lowered.
That's exactly what it was.
But the physical vulnerability was only half the plan. The other half was the deliberate, constant visibility of the victim herself.
And this is where the story really pivots into the digital age. Kardashian was, I mean, she was pioneering a new model of fame, leveraging her social media to reach 300 million followers. This platform wasn't just for sharing fashion.
No, it was a digital display case for her wealth.
Exactly. And the centerpiece of that display was the 20-carat diamond ring, a gift from her husband, Kanye West, or Ye, valued at around $4 million.
It wasn't just a piece of jewelry, it was a character in her online narrative.
It was effectively a digital beacon. The sources confirm she was posting selfies where this enormous diamond was just so prominently visible. Sometimes she'd even use diamond emojis to caption or sign the posts.
So she created a digital paper trail showing exactly where she was, what she possessed, and when she possessed it.
And investigators found that the criminals didn't need to employ some sophisticated digital espionage.
They didn't hack her phone, they just followed her public feed.
Exactly. They simply monitored her digital breadcrumbs, the images, the timestamps, the geotags, and they combined that freely available information with the old-school criminal methods of surveillance and homejacking.
So they knew the target was high value, they knew her location, and through local knowledge, they knew the building was functionally unsecured.
The perfect storm.
And the final piece of this fatal puzzle was the absence of her primary security detail, Pascal Duvier.
The timing was just crucial. The incident happened at 2:56 a.m. Her sister Courtney and a friend were still out clubbing across town.
Wow.
And the sources suggest that earlier, maybe even jokingly, they had discussed needing a bodyguard. And Kardashian, thinking she was totally secure inside her impenetrable, unmarked penthouse, sent Duvier with her sister.
And that decision left the most vulnerable point in the entire security chain,
The celebrity herself.
protected only by a single concierge who happened to possess the spare key.
It was the perfect operational window for the robbers.
So the security is breached, the target is isolated, and the roadmap has been laid out for everyone to see online. Let's pivot to the moment the quiet of that luxury suite was just shattered. Kim is alone. She's in her bathrobe, winding down.
Right.
And she hears a sound that, at first, she just discounts.
She hears stomping on the stairs. She later testified that her initial thought, which really shows the banality of that moment, was that her sister, Courtney, was just returning late.
Maybe a little drunk, being loud.
Exactly. She even called out, "Hello, who is it?"
That moment of confused normalcy then just devolves into sheer panic.
Very quick.
She grabs her phone, which is the instinct of, any modern person, to call emergency services.
Right, but the instinct is American. She dialed 911, momentarily forgetting she was in France.
Oh, wow.
And before she could even process that error or manage to dial her bodyguard, the door to her suite just bursts open.
And the sources describe 5 masked men storming in.
Yes, and the robbers used this deliberate technique to project power immediately. They were kind of relying on the public fear of, terrorism or hyper-militarized security forces that was so prevalent in Paris at that time.
Right.
They were masked and dressed either in black police-style uniforms or oddly fluorescent security bibs.
Like traffic controllers or something.
Exactly. It gave them this air of false authority. And that disguise, coupled with the fact they were visibly armed, was instantly terrifying. And they had already overpowered the hotel's only night guard and brought him with them.
That brings us to Abdul Rahman, the concierge. He's such a crucial figure here, suddenly transitioning from a hospitality role.
He was a Sorbonne PhD student, no less.
A PhD student to being a hostage and a translator.
He became the unwilling key to the whole operation. The robbers were French-speaking, and Kim, of course, speaks English.
That he had to translate.
He was forced at gunpoint to use his spare key to open the penthouse door and then translate the robbers' violent demands. Abdelrahman later stated that his calm, compliant demeanor wasn't cowardice.
Oh, it was survival.
It was a conscious survival mechanism, a desperate attempt to de-escalate the situation, and, he said, save both their lives.
And the terror Kim described during her court testimony years later was just visceral. The man holding the gun was focused on one thing.
She recalled the man, masked, pulling her aggressively toward him, zip-tying her hands with plastic cables, and pressing a gun to her head.
An old pistol, I think.
Yeah, later identified as a small antique pistol. And he was just relentlessly demanding the ring, and pointing to his own hand to signify the diamond ring.
She thought she was going to die, or worse.
She articulated her deepest fears in really graphic detail during the trial. She was wearing only a bathrobe. She begged, "Don't kill me, I have babies, I have to make it home." And crucially, she testified she was terrified of being sexually assaulted. She said she thought she was going to be raped and then killed. It was a complete and immediate shattering of her public persona into just this primal fear for survival.
And in that terrifying 49 minutes the robbers were in the building, they managed to amass a truly incredible haul.
It was absolutely immense. The total value was estimated at $9 to $10 million, which is roughly 10 million euros.
Wow.
And while the $4 million 20-carat diamond ring was the star, they took 12 other pieces.
Okay.
The sources list diamond-encrusted Cartier bracelets, a magnificent gold and diamond Jacob necklace, Lorraine Schwartz diamond earrings, a Rolex.
They just cleaned out the jewelry box she brought with her.
Completely. She later told authorities she even offered them cash, but they just ignored it. They only wanted the precious high-value jewels.
And once they had the goods, they needed to neutralize her before they could make their escape or, continue their work.
Right, so they secured the haul, and then they bound her. They secured her mouth with a long piece of tape all the way around her head.
Oh, my God.
And she was then physically carried into the enormous marble bathroom and placed on the floor, effectively confined. It's worth noting that the concierge later mentioned the robbers initially intended to visit other residences in the building as well.
So the job wasn't even finished.
And not in their minds.
So what stopped them? What cut the job short before they could move on?
Well, it was the technology they had used to target her that, kind of unexpectedly, became her salvation.
Her phone.
Her phone rang. It was Pascal Duvier, her bodyguard, calling from the club.
Wow.
And the concierge, Abdul Rahman, who was still handcuffed, recognized this as the critical moment. He warned the robbers, in French, that if Kardashian didn't answer that phone, the bodyguard would immediately know something was wrong.
And he'd come rushing back with the police.
He would, and the professional criminals understood that. The time limit was up. That phone call acted as a definitive alarm bell, and they fled abruptly after only 49 minutes inside the building.
So the robbers disappeared, but she was still bound in the bathroom. How did she get out and alert the authorities?
The determination she showed in freeing herself really highlights the trauma she was experiencing. I mean, her hands were zip-tied, her mouth was taped. She managed to rub the plastic ties against the bathroom sink's marble edge, just slowly fraying them until she could break free.
Incredible.
Still partially bound and barefoot, she hopped downstairs to find her stylist, Simone Harouche, who had heard the commotion, and wisely locked herself in her own separate room.
Smart.
They fled together onto the balcony and hid in the bushes until the police arrived. The first call she successfully placed was to her mother, Kris Jenner, and the sources confirmed the psychological impact was immediate and just devastating.
The initial reaction was, of course, global shock, but also, unfortunately, this wave of digital skepticism, a really cruel suggestion that maybe this was exaggerated or staged for attention.
Which was just awful.
But the speed of the police response and the physical evidence, it quickly confirmed the terrifying reality. And for a crew of veteran thieves, their getaway was, shockingly clumsy. It left a critical trail of evidence.
It really speaks to either rush or old age or maybe just hubris. They had planned to use bicycles to navigate the narrow Parisian streets and avoid the fixed cameras and traffic common to the area.
Which is a smart, low-tech escape strategy.
A very smart strategy. However, they made two catastrophic errors.
The first one was literally dropping the loop.
Precisely. A platinum and diamond cross necklace, valued at $24,000, was accidentally dropped into a gutter on Rue Tronchet near the escape route.
And the police figured one of them fell off his bike.
That was the deduction, that one of the thieves likely fell, causing the bag with the jewels to rip open.
Mm-hmm.
And here's the truly bizarre human element to this. The necklace was found by a passerby who didn't immediately turn it in.
No way.
Yes. They actually wore it for a period before realizing its significance and reporting it to the authorities.
That is a massive blunder for a multi-million-dollar heist. But the second mistake was the true undoing of the entire operation. This connected this modern crime to the historical French underworld.
That was the DNA. Forensic investigators meticulously collected the plastic ties and the tape used to bind Kardashian and the concierge.
And they found something.
Trace DNA was successfully extracted, and that DNA matched a profile already logged in the French national database, Omar Aïd Kadash. This was the critical breakthrough.
So Kadak's profile wasn't just randomly there, it was because he was a career criminal.
Exactly. This allowed the police to connect him to the current operation, and this is how the entire structure of the Grandpa Robbers crew came to light.
Right, so once Kadak, the suspected ringleader, was identified.
Police used old-school surveillance techniques. We're talking wiretaps, tracking prepaid phones to map out the entire network. They eventually arrested 17 suspects and charged 12.
Though one died before trial and another was deemed unfit.
Right. And that's how the French press coined the name that stuck.
Les papis braqueurs.
The grandpa robbers. It just adds this layer of surreal humor to what was a deeply traumatic event.
It really does.
We're talking about men in their 60s and 70s, some arriving in court with orthopedic shoes and canes. These are not the, cinematic, sleek heist masters you see in movies.
No, not at all. They are the veterans of the Parisian milieu, the organized underworld. They had done time, they knew the routines, and they saw this as a final, monumental score.
Let's talk about the two most prominent figures, starting with the key, Kadek.
Omar Ait Kaddouf, known as Old Omar. He was the man whose DNA cracked the case.
Right.
At the time of the trial in 2025, he was 69 years old, though he was 60 when the crime occurred, which is just a clear illustration of the delay in this case.
A huge delay. He was investigated as the ringleader, responsible for orchestrating the recruitment, setting up the logistics, and most importantly, arranging the sale of the stolen diamonds.
Probably using networks in places like Antwerp.
Exactly, the global diamond trade center. His defense tried to argue he was just a foot soldier, blaming some mysterious, unnamed superior, but prosecutors were unconvinced.
And he had health issues too, right?
He is severely deaf, which meant his court appearance was conducted with instructions relayed on a screen, which just added to the surreal atmosphere.
And then there's Yunis Abbas, who didn't just participate in the crime, he monetized it after the fact.
Oh, yeah. Abbas, age 71, had already served 20 years for previous burglaries. He confessed his involvement, but famously claimed he had absolutely no idea who Kim Kardashian was.
Just that she was the wife of a rapper.
That was his line. And his most audacious move was writing a book titled, I Kidnapped Kim Kardashian.
I still can't believe he did that.
It openly detailed the planning, the execution, the mindset behind the robbery. It showed this bizarre lack of remorse mixed with a desire for, a final bit of fame himself.
So the arrests were made pretty quickly in early 2017, just months after the event. But then the case just stalls for 9 years. 9 years passed between the crime and the trial commencing in 2025. This massive judicial delay is really a story in itself.
It is the defining systemic element of this case. The sources indicate this massive multi-year delay, almost a decade, was the result of a complex collision of specific French legal practices and bureaucratic necessity.
So what specifically slowed this down so severely?
Well, first, you have the immense complexity and scale of the case itself. 12 original defendants, detailed wiretap evidence, the international movement of stolen goods, and a high-profile victim requiring protective measures.
That alone slows things down.
It does. Second, and crucially, the French judicial system placed anti-terrorism cases as its highest priority following the catastrophic 2015 attacks in Paris.
Yeah.
So this high-profile but non-terrorism case was simply pushed far, far down the docket.
And we can't forget the defendants themselves. I mean, their advanced age and health issues, which we noted earlier, became a major tactic for their legal teams.
Their failing health became a persistent source of delay. We're talking about men suffering from Parkinson's, cancer, advanced Alzheimer's disease.
Wow.
So every time a defendant required extensive medical treatment or was deemed unfit for interrogation or a court appearance due to declining health, the proceedings would just grind to a halt.
And the lawyers would argue that pretrial detention was basically a death sentence.
Exactly. It added further complexity and a sort of compassion fatigue to the whole process.
It just paints a picture of a legal system struggling under the weight of bureaucracy, competing priorities, and defendants who are literally aging out of the system before justice can be served.
A perfect summary.
So after this nearly decade-long wait, the trial finally commences.
By April 2025, when the 4-week trial began at Paris's Assizes Court, the physical contrast in the courtroom was just overwhelming. On one side, you have this iconic global figure.
And on the other, a row of frail, often unwell men leaning on canes.
It was the sight.
The media attention was exactly what you would expect for a case of this magnitude, but the atmosphere inside must have felt deeply strange, reconciling the horror of 2016 with the frail reality of the aging men being prosecuted 9 years later.
And the lawyers for the Papis braqueurs immediately focused on the perceived cruelty of jailing men in their 70s.
Right.
They stressed that these men were already suffering severe health conditions and that the 9-year delay had essentially constituted a long-form punishment in itself. The defense basically argued for clemency based on biological limitations.
The emotional core of the trial, though, was undoubtedly Kim's return to Paris to testify on May 13th, 2025. She needed to re-articulate the trauma she experienced.
To pull it back from the digital narrative and place it firmly in the physical reality of the courtroom. And her testimony was powerful and graphic. She recounted those early hours in meticulous detail, confirming that her fear was absolute. She stated unequivocally that she thought she was going to be killed, and she emphasized the terrifying fear of sexual violence.
I remember her quote, something like, "They can take everything, I just have to make it home."
That was it. Confirming that the material loss was instantly secondary to the loss of her life and her ability to return to her children. She said the crime was the most terrifying experience of my life and stressed that the trauma changed her life forever.
This is the moment where the global icon really had to confront the human consequences of her public visibility.
And that confrontation was made even more complex by her appearance itself.
Oh, right, this was a huge point of discussion.
Yeah, while recounting the loss of her jewelry and the trauma of flaunting wealth, she arrived at the courthouse wearing this stunning diamond necklace, reportedly worth around $1.5 million.
Which is a choice. What was the message there?
Well, that's what observers debated. Was it an act of defiance, showing she had reclaimed control over her life and assets? Or was it a subtle contradiction, highlighting the continued complex reliance on the very symbols of wealth that had made her a target?
A fascinating moment. And then there was an emotional resolution of sorts involving Kadek, the ringleader. He offered a written apology.
He did. He expressed regret and stated his hope that she could gradually forget the trauma.
And her response was incredibly measured.
And powerful. She stated, "I am deeply grateful to the French authorities for their diligence. I forgive you for what had taken place, but it doesn't change the emotions, the feeling, and the trauma, and the fact that my life has forever changed."
So an acknowledgement of the apology, but a definitive statement that the trauma was permanent.
Exactly. Yunus Abbas also expressed regrets in court, confirming their actions caused significant trauma.
However, the defense's focus on age and forgiveness was countered by the lawyer representing the hotel concierge, Abdul Rahman.
Right, Mohan Ouija, the concierge's lawyer, pushed back hard on this narrative of the harmless grandpa robbers.
He emphasized that the severity of the crime couldn't be minimized.
He rightly stressed the factual gravity of the incident. He said, "This was armed robbery, violence, and bondage. It's serious, regardless of the robber's age." The victim was not just robbed. She was held against her will, bound, and threatened with a weapon.
And that distinction mattered significantly to the actual charges.
It really did.
So after 4 weeks of intense testimony and media scrutiny, the verdict finally arrives on May 23, 2025. For the 10 defendants on trial, what was the final tally?
8 of the 10 were found guilty. 7 men and 1 woman, Christiane Gloden, that's Kadek's girlfriend, who was convicted of conspiracy for her peripheral involvement.
And 2 were acquitted.
Correct. And they were convicted of armed robbery and the critical legal charge of sequestration.
That term sequestration is important here, especially in French law. It's distinct from a more severe charge like kidnapping. Can you clarify that distinction for us?
Absolutely. In French law, sequestration is essentially holding a victim against their will without voluntary liberation. Kidnapping, or enlèvement, usually implies transporting the victim to another location or demanding a ransom, or holding them for a much longer period.
Okay, that makes sense.
So since Kardashian was held within her own residence for under an hour and the primary goal was material theft, the charge was armed robbery combined with sequestration.
Still very serious.
Oh, a very serious offense, but it allowed the court slightly more latitude than a full kidnapping charge would have mandated.
Given that they were convicted of armed robbery and the psychological terror inflicted, what were the sentences handed down?
And this is where the 9-year delay and the advanced age of the defendants became the decisive factor. This is the sentencing paradox. Sentences ranged from 3 to 8 years. Kadek got the stiffest sentence, 8 years, with 5 of those years suspended.
But these sentences were much lighter than what the prosecution wanted.
Significantly lighter than the prosecution's request for up to 10 years for the core participants.
Wait a minute. Armed robbery of $10 million. Violence, bondage, resulting in sentences of up to 8 years, but they all walked free. How did the French system justify a non-custodial sentence for such a massive crime?
This outcome is rooted entirely in the French philosophy of justice, which places a significant emphasis on rehabilitation, proportionality, and mitigating factors, specifically age and health.
Right.
The chief judge, David DePaz, explicitly cited the defendants' advanced ages. The oldest was 79, and that immense 9-year delay as crucial factors that weighed heavily on the court.
So the bureaucratic failure to prosecute this swiftly effectively served as a mitigating factor for the criminals themselves.
Precisely. Because many of the defendants had already served up to 2 years in pretrial detention following the 2017 arrests.
Okay.
And because their health was so precarious, many required continuous specialized care, the court suspended the remainder of their sentences, provided they commit no further crimes.
So in practical terms, they will not return to prison.
They will not. The system acknowledged the severity of the crime, but determined that further incarceration would serve no constructive purpose and would essentially be a death sentence. It prioritized compassion and proportionality over strict punitive retribution.
And the ultimate frustration for the prosecution, and I imagine for the victim, is that while justice was technically served with the convictions, the material loss was never truly rectified. The vast majority of the jewelry is still missing.
Oh, the stolen goods vanished almost immediately. As we mentioned, only that $24,000 cross necklace was ever recovered.
That's it.
That's it. Investigative sources strongly suggest that Kerek's established network efficiently handled the disposal. Gold was melted down rapidly to avoid identification, and the diamonds were likely sold into the black market in Antwerp, where anonymous transactions are still relatively common.
The trail went cold almost instantly.
It did, which underscores the professionalism of their final phase, even if their escape was a bit clumsy.
Beyond the courtroom, this incident fundamentally altered the way celebrity operates. The heist forced a massive, permanent reevaluation of how fame, wealth, and visibility intersect.
The shift was seismic, and it started with Kim Kardashian herself. She went from being the absolute queen of real-time sharing to intensely guarded and private.
Right. She completely stopped posting her location in real time.
Often delaying posts by days or even weeks. Her social media feed became noticeably stripped of ostentatious jewelry, and the sources detailed this massive upgrade to her security detail.
She hired personnel with extensive experience, former Secret Service, CIA.
Yes, and implemented rigid, high-tech security protocols at all her residences globally.
And this change wasn't restricted to her personal life. It became industry standard advice overnight.
Absolutely. Publicists, managers, security professionals globally realized that real-time sharing was just too high a risk. The heist proved that digital visibility was the primary intelligence source for criminals.
So the advice became standard. Delay posts, remove exact location tags.
And always assume any display wealth is being cataloged by potential threats. Visibility remains currency in the celebrity world, but the rules of engagement, that balance between performance and personal safety, were irrevocably changed by the actions of a few elderly men on bicycles.
So we've traced this entire extraordinary narrative, the confluence of security neglect and digital display, the terrifying 49 minutes of armed sequestration by the grandpa robbers.
The long, bureaucratic crawl toward justice, and that final lenient sentencing rooted in age and time served.
It's a remarkable story of how a deeply analog criminal element utilized a perfectly modern vulnerability. The absurdity of career criminals using Instagram as their target database is only rivaled by the judicial outcome that allowed them to walk free, even after being convicted.
It really highlights how quickly technology changes the nature of crime, but how slowly institutions like the justice system adapt to those changes.
And the robbery irrevocably changed Kardashian's relationship with fame and security, shifting her from, as you said, a performance artist of wealth to a highly guarded individual.
It really did.
But here is the final thought for you to explore on your own. When a justice system relies on extreme leniency or perhaps compassion due to bureaucratic failures and the failing health of its defendants, despite the severity of the initial trauma, does that signal that age and delay are more important factors in accountability than the immediate violation of life and property? And more practically, what does this case tell us about the hidden cost of prioritizing institutional efficiency over all other considerations?
A fascinating tension between accountability and compassion. Thank you for joining us for the deep dive.
We'll catch you next time.